Hello, everyone. My name is Ellison. I'm running for the United States House of Representatives to represent Florida's 17th Congressional District. Today, we have a special guest, Gary Wein. He is the former vice mayor of Punta Gorda. And it's so wonderful to have Mr. Wein on with us today. We've been knowing each other for some years now. We actually met in the 2018 election cycle, and he's been a wonderful individual to get to know. And I want to introduce each and every one of you to him. Thank you for coming today, Mr. Wein.
Oh, it's my pleasure and honor. Looking forward to our conversations. We've had many before, now we get to share them.
Exactly. So how's everything going for you in this new COVID area?
Well, you know, I'm an old retired guy from the baby boomers, so Linda and I are personally very little affected from a financial standpoint. We don't have to work for a living anymore, so to speak. We do miss our grandchildren. That's quite frankly the biggest sacrifice that we have to give. We live kind of in a little slice of nirvana, so I can't say that we're suffering too bad, unlike many other people. But as many of our friends are making a concerted effort to maintain safe social distancing. And I might add, a lot of them are very strong Trump supporters, but when it comes to the social distancing, they're towing the line and taking it quite seriously, at least down here.
Yeah, you know, it's been really tough, you know, for a lot of people. As you see, I'm here in my salon, and today it's empty. So we've taken a hit because of the COVID situation. And I know that there are a lot of businesses that have taken a hit. And then when you look at, you know, what's taking place with some of the national chains like JCPenney's, Pier 1 Exports, and some of the others, you know, some of these jobs will never come back again. And it's going to be a really sad set of events, you know, for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. I have a son in Richmond, Virginia, who has 4 restaurants. He has 2 of them reopened as carry-out only now, but he has 65 people laid off. And he's seriously considering walking away from his largest restaurant because for him to maintain the overhead versus when he sees the comeback, and to be able to come back at 50% is not what's going to allow him to be able to make a living off of that restaurant. From an investment standpoint, he may need to just walk away from it. And these are tough decisions for small businessmen to make.
Yeah.
And the effects on their employees. And in his case, he's got 65 employees that are still on unemployment.
Yeah. We're going to have to get very creative to try to figure this thing out. Because, you know, I've had conversations with people and they don't actually know what they're going to do. And maybe we can have a town hall around business development and help people to get into, you know, some type of business to get through this tough time.
Well, and as you know, I can be a little bit flippant and irreverent, but in all seriousness, it's not going to be for me and my generation to figure it out. It's time for us to step out. And it's your generation that needs to start stepping forward. If I were to criticize our opportunities for the presidential election, as much as I love Joe Biden and he's a great man, he's sympathetic, he understands, smart, he's going to do a great job for us. But we just have 2 old white guys to be able to vote for right now. And it's time for us to step up and let our children take the reign. And I think that we're in a transition period to that at this juncture.
Yeah.
So good luck. It's your job. That's why we're electing you.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is, you know, our backgrounds and, you know, what, if you can just give me like an understanding of who you are, where you come from, what motivated you to get into politics. You know, I think the viewers would appreciate that. And then I'll go next after you.
Okay, I'll be real quick. I'm an inner city kid from the city of Chicago, truly. I come from humble means, and I was not poor because I was totally loved by my parents and my aunts and uncles and cousins. etc. That's what it was, that family bond that was our wealth. My cousins and I, by the way, have all done quite well from an economic standpoint, but it wasn't what our driving force was. As far as my getting into politics goes, I've always been involved in environmental science through my whole career, from 1972 to even to this juncture right now. And we had a situation in Punta Gorda where they were building a new water treatment plant, and people were asking me what I thought of the project. And I said, you know, I would donate some time from an engineering standpoint to evaluate it, to see if it was real. And the next thing I knew, they asked me to be on city council. So that's how I got involved in politics. I was asked, I was raised to serve, and I couldn't say no. And it was a wonderful trip. And the plant is built, and we had other successes, and that's pretty much it.
That's a very interesting story, but I know that there's a whole lot more to it. We'll get into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that one of the biggest personal benefits of having been in politics, and that keeps going to this day, where I'm not actually an elected official per se, is that you get to know so many people with so many different talents. And when issues or problems come up for people, you can be the grand facilitator. You can say, oh, I know somebody that can help you, or I can direct you to, and you make those relationships, and they don't go away. And it's nice. You can just quietly, you don't have to be in the middle of everything, and just say, and you can see that big problems for individuals that are small problems for general can get solved quite easily and quite rapidly. And it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I've been behind the scenes. That's true, but we don't have to. This is about you.
Well, you know, most of my life I've been behind the scenes on so many different things, and I guess for the first time in my life, I've had to come from behind the scenes and step up and be out front. So, you know, being out front is something that it's one of those things where I don't necessarily like it, but I understand that it's necessary. And you know, I grew up in Hardee County. My mother was a special needs instructor, and I often went to work with her. And basically, I was able to learn that, you know, you have to be able to see past an individual's disabilities to recognize their abilities. And so I learned that from my mom. And my dad was a mechanic, an auto mechanic, and he also painted cars. And you know, I used to go to work with him. So I learned how to paint cars growing up. I actually took my first engine out when I was 10. And I didn't put it back in though, but I took it out. So I learned what hard work was all about. I used to work in the orange groves side by side with migrant farmers. And, you know, that work was very hard. I didn't like doing that either. So, you know, when I was in the 5th grade, I needed a haircut. And in Hardee County, there wasn't any ethnic barbershops. So I took my dad's clippers and I cut my own hair. And I messed it up pretty good. I mean, I was doing pretty good from the front, but when I got to the back, I had so many patches in my head, people started calling me Patches. But it was the excitement of cutting my own hair that led me to continue doing it. And my uncle, he had a car wash in Hardee County. And so I would go to my uncle's car wash on the weekends and wash cars and take the money that I would make from washing cars to pay the kids in the neighborhood to let me cut their hair. And so I did that. And then my dad found out that I was paying people to cut their hair, and he put a stop to it. He said, it doesn't make good business sense. So I started charging $1. And by now I'm in the 6th grade. So I kept doing that. And then by the time I got to the 8th grade, my dad invested in 3 barber chairs and some clippers, some professional grade clippers, because I was using the Walmart brands, and basically a whole barber kit. And so I started charging $5, and I would cut hair in school. And then by the time I got to high school, I was cutting hair in the principal's office for the principal. I I was cutting hair in the classroom.
Oh,
So
that's how you got through high school?
yeah, I got through high school cutting
That's
hair.
why I cutting the principal's hair. Yeah, very good.
Cutting the teacher's hair. I got great grades and everything. I cut the football team, the basketball team, the track, cross country. I cut everyone's hair. And by the time I graduated high school, I had already found a barbershop that was doing a better job at cutting than I was. So I went to go and intern in that barbershop. 2 months later, I enrolled in South Florida South Florida. It was actually South Florida Community College at the time, but they changed the name. And I just found out that George Floyd actually went to the same college that I did a few years before I did. I ended up graduating from there. I met my wife at the college, and we ended up graduating and then going to Florida Southern in Lakeland, where I got my degree in political science. And from there, I didn't think that I would get into politics right away. And I actually didn't. I continued to cut hair, and we moved to DC, and she went to medical school, and then she got pregnant, and we came back home. And having a newborn baby, it was something that I knew that I had to do my best to make sure that she was taken care of. So I continued to work, and then we ended up going back to DC, and I worked as a barber up there. And she continued to go to medical school, so she finished, and then 5 years later, we ended up coming back home, and things kind of evolved. My daughter grew up; she was a Christmas baby, and here we are today. I'm a political scientist and cosmetologist, so I guess that makes me a cosmopolitician. And running for the United States Congress, looking to help individuals. Working in this profession, it's been really good, not only from the aspect of being able to take care of my family, but also giving me the platform to be able to hear people and be able to connect and recognize differences and find common threads that kind of bind us all together. When you're working in a cosmetology salon or a barbershop environment, people are going to come in, they're going to be very highly opinionated. They're going to be talking about sports, religion, politics. And so, being in this profession for over 20 years, I've gotten a very strong sense of what is on people's minds about, the social issues. So that's my background. And this is the reason why I'm running, because I know what those issues are.
I'm going to add a little bit more to that. The very first time I ever heard your name, I was asked if I would be willing to run against Stubbe. I was not enthusiastic about it. I'm an old guy. I would have had to resign my consul position. I was enjoying what I was doing there and so forth. And I decided not to. And then unfortunately, April passed away, as we're all aware. She was going to be the candidate. And I was approached again. And I said I would do it, but I knew I wouldn't win. I just was going to do it to make noise. And then I heard that when the Democratic group had their meeting, Patrick Hurley said, "Gary, you're off the hook." They immediately mentioned this guy out of Sebring by the name of, and everybody unanimously, he's the guy to carry the standard force. And that's the very first time I heard your name. And I remember very much when I met you, we were both speakers at a rally for Andrew Gillum when he was running for governor. And I don't know if you remember it, but we had several conversations prior, and we also had a conversation afterward. But one of the things that I want to kind of change the tune a little bit, if you don't mind, is when I was asked to speak, I was actually coming back from visiting grandchildren in Atlanta. And I had worked out a little speech. But when I went to the podium, I realized that I took my speech and I threw it away, because Squirrel Hill had just happened in Pennsylvania. And being Jewish, it was very, very personal to me. when the synagogue was shot up in Pennsylvania, in Squirrel Hill. And I gave a speech straight from my heart. And you made a very sweet comment to me. And where I want to segue into that is, in light of the events that have recently happened in Minnesota and in Georgia, that's got to have an effect on you. Just because of who you are. And it can't determine how you function, but it's got to have an emotional turn on you. You can't just slough it off and say, so how do you feel? Share with me and as us, as an individual and a human being, how that affects you.
I'll tell you, it touches me very deeply. It touches me to my core. Because with Ahmaud, with him getting gunned down the way that he did, I was in a situation like that in high school where I was walking through the wrong neighborhood, and there was a young kid. He said, Paul, a coon. And, when I heard that, I thought that there was a raccoon. And so I was looking to see what he was looking for. But to know that his dad actually came out of the house with a shotgun and pointed it at me, it made me feel, some type of way. And I ended up running away to keep from being shot. So I understand, what it's like living as a Black man in this country, and not many people can say that. Not many people can understand what that's like. When I think about what happened to George, just watching that video, and to know that there was a police officer on his neck for 9 minutes, it felt like life was leaving me. It felt like that our lives doesn't matter. I felt powerless. I felt hurt. I felt like, when is it going to change? I felt like that we are not valued enough as citizens in this country. We are not valued enough as Americans. And most importantly, we are not valued as humans. And when you think about the campaign of Black Lives Matter, immediately other campaigns with similar hashtags started to form. And it was almost as if they were forming to diminish the concept of what Black Lives Matter meant. And so maybe the campaign should be Black Lives Matter too, because that is what they're saying. That is what the essence of what they're trying to convey. Not that all lives don't matter, but we know that all lives matter. But for some reason, Black lives seem to not be valued in the same way as everyone else. And it's very evident whenever you look at the fact that there are 34 million African Americans in this country, 180 million whites, but Blacks are targeted in a way that make it where the prison systems are overran with Blacks. When you think about police officers and their drug bust, I know that there are good cops. I have family members that are cops. I have friends that are cops. But there are some bad cops, and we have to face that reality. There are cops that are in the KKK. There are cops that are in the Aryan Nation. There are cops that are in the alt-right movement. But when they get on the force, they bring that mentality to the table. And whenever you have a situation where they are targeting African-American communities, racially profiling them, and approaching them with those personal and social bias, you're gonna end up with a situation where Blacks are gonna be disproportionately incarcerated, charged, handled. And it's just sad. You know, blacks have been saying these are the type of things that have been going on for far too long. But thanks to cell phones and the access to cameras, now people are finally starting to see that that these types of scenarios exist. In just a week, we've already had three black people murdered at the hands of cops or police officers or ex-police officers, because when you look at Ahmaud, those were ex-police officers. And so, you know, we have to change this in this country. One of the ways that I'm looking at making changes is actually running for federal office to be able to write laws that make it harder for people with authority to hurt people who don't have authority. We need to make sure that more black and brown people are striving to become judges, more striving to become police officers, and be a part of the political action that it takes to bring about this change. So this situation, it hurts. You know, like I said, I could feel the life leaving out of me, and it was being replaced by extreme anger. But, you know, being a Christian, I know that I can't utilize that anger in a way that is destructive. I have to try to channel that anger into something positive and be about positive change. So, you know,
just remember, we've had conversations that our viewers aren't going to know. So we've had and you've been more optimistic than me, and I know that you're going to retain that optimism. And though I'm optimistic also, the future does not belong to the status quo. The future is going to belong to the demographics as they change in this country to a much more diverse rainbow of color. As I said to you a number of times, the future belongs to my Honduran Jewish grandchildren, and how our children are going to be more colorblind than we were, and we're more colorblind than our parents. And there's going to be 4 steps forward and 3 steps back. And I think that's what we're experiencing now. I mean, I lived through the 50s and the 60s and saw what happened, but I illustrated with how it can happen is because I recently, because of this incident, started recalling some things from my youth, and I researched it. And it really comes down to George Wallace, the former governor of Alabama, who was once termed to be the most evil and dangerous segregationist and racist in this country, and was able, at the end of his service, to earn 90% of the black vote in Alabama because of a relationship that started with Shirley Chisholm when he got shot. And it was his being shot that he was able to experience pain, and he was able to extrapolate that and realize just how wrong he was. My point being is, a man like that can be turned 180, so can we all, to go in the same direction. So yes, it hurts, it makes us angry. You and I have shared experiences that we've had. I have the advantage of being able to hide in the woods, so to speak, if I choose not to wear who I am on my sleeve. But it is up to our children, and it's up to your generation to quote a famous Sebring philosopher, it's time to build bridges. That was you, remember.
Yeah, I mean, we're
going to build bridges, and I know it, you know it. I know how you think. I know how logical you are. You're smart, and these are the tough ones. And it's going to be a difficult transition. You know, we've discussed this many times, but it's going to transition. It'll happen.
It's going to be difficult, but you know, as you were stating earlier, I am actually optimistic because of our youth. You know, my daughter, she's 9 years old, and in about 9 years from now, she'll be 18. And in her age demographic, you know, these children are more homogenous than any demographic before them. They think alike, they're on the same page, they watch the same movies, they enjoy the same music, they play the same video games, they're interconnected in ways that no one else before them have been. And so the key is going to be making sure that they understand that they have a responsibility to make true change in this country. And I know that they're going to do it because they don't have a lot of the old uh, American traditions inside of them. They didn't grow up in segregation. They're very much integrated and they very much enjoy one another. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. Whenever I, go to my daughter's school to eat with her prior to COVID, it's a beautiful thing to watch how these children interact with one another and the diversities and the way that they work through their problems. They don't see race, which is something that, in America, the thing is, people look at race first more than they look at anything else. And, wherever you go around the world, there's always going to be that thing that humans use to separate themselves and elevate themselves. It can be caste, it can be class, it can be tribalism, it can be, social economic status. There's all types of things that humans use. But here in America, we use race, and it's something that you can't change. So I'm just really excited about the future of what America will look like. And some people fear it, but it's coming, it's inevitable. And when you live in a homogenous society, there are going to be other problems, but at least race won't be such a big problem. So I'm excited about that.
Well, I think the day will come in the best of all possible worlds, that Martin Luther King's dream will be realized in this country. We will truly become the melting pot. We will adhere to what the Statue of Liberty espouses for us. It's a goal. We're not there yet, but I think we're farther along, and we're going to have setbacks. We're having a big setback right now. But I just want to say one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, although I take a little bit of issue with your slogan, "A new path forward." Any path forward is new. And that's my point, because your opponent, his position is just the dogma of Trumpism. He is on record as saying, "I'm going to be there to protect Donald." He says Trump, I'll say Donald. You, on the other hand, I see an open-minded. You're not lockstep with the one way fits all. And that gets back to when I was referring to Shirley Chisholm, when she developed her relationship with George Wallace, and she is in New York, and she's first black African-American congresswoman person elected. And when she needed help from the Southern Democrats, she went to George Wallace to lobby them for her, because they would talk to him, and she was very successful. And I see that attitude in you, and I see that in you. So we have not only a local representative that we need to change for representing us in District 17, but also a presidential candidate. And I think that we'll go hand in hand that way. And I'm looking really forward to seeing you have to listen to my complaining as a constituent, and my annoyancing as a constituent, and my kvetching, as I would say, as a constituent, because that's what your job is going to be. You're going to listen to a whole bunch of us. We're going to have all the solutions in the world, but it's going to be up to you and your generation to sort them out and come up with something practical. So,
the thing is that, cutting hair growing up, I messed a lot of people's hair up. And so I heard a lot of complaining. So I'm used to the complaining. That doesn't bother me. But I'm even more motivated about actually bringing about positive change and being able to help. And so the other thing about, a new path forward is it's really about a path that improves the quality of life for all people, not just people in the Democratic Party or special interest groups or, people that I like. It's about improving the quality of life for all people. And the thing is that no matter who you are, no matter what your party affiliation is, everyone is interested in a better quality of life. Everyone could be doing a lot better and want to do a lot better than what they're doing. So for me, it's about um, making sure that everyone is represented. It's about finding those common threads that bring us all together. And it's also about being a true representative of the people. You stated earlier that my opponent is one that is only there to represent and back up the President of the United States. And I understand that you have a responsibility to be able to work with the executive, but at the same time, Congress is a co-equal branch of government that is designed to place a checks and balance on the executive branch and vice versa. So it's not like you are there to represent the president, you are there to represent the constituents. But if you can get something done with the president, then by all means make it happen. You have to be able to work with both sides of the aisle, but your responsibility is not solely to the president. Your responsibility is for your constituents. And right now in our congressional district of 17, Greg Stubbe has not represented the people of this district. And I'll tell you how he has not represented the people of this district. Florida is going to get hurricanes every single year. We were threatened with a hurricane just about a week ago, actually. And this individual voted against the hurricane relief funding for Florida twice. Okay. People are hurting because of COVID-19. They're out of work. Their businesses have been shut down. Some people actually have gotten COVID. We've had over 100 deaths because of COVID. Families are left in the shuffle. They're hurting from the deaths of their family members. And when we have an opportunity to bring resources to these hurting people, this congressman, as part of what they call the Corona 40, he was one of the congressmen that voted against the funding to help people during their time of need in this pandemic. He's also the same guy that put a bill on the floor to dismantle the EPA, say that we don't need an EPA. And the fact is that in the state of Florida, we have a great deal of environmental catastrophes, a great deal of environmental issues. We have Lake Okeechobee, who is polluted so bad that they're now calling the lake Pollution Lake. We have places inside of our congressional district that is dealing constantly with red tide and blue-green algae. We have places in Hardee County where the Mosaic Mining Company is pouring tons and tons of waste directly into our aquifer. We have carbon footprint that is placing a great deal of stress on our ozone layer, and global warming is causing our water levels to rise. We have over 800,000 tons of raw sewage seeping on our streets. And the only defense that we have is the EPA to make sure that our land is clean, our water is clean, and our air quality is better. To take that away, you basically are allowing corporate interests to destroy our environment. And so it should be important to all Floridians. It should be important to all people in the United States. And everything that he has done has been to benefit someone other than the people. And so, I want people to understand that, when I go to Washington, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to hear you. This is what I do. My gift is helping others. And I can't think of a better way than to help you, than to listen to you, hear your concerns, and make positive change for each and every one of you. So that's who I am. That's what I'm about.
So I want to add one more factoid to your discussion about Mosaic. Keep in mind that the stacks, the waste calcium sulfate, are radioactive, and they are radioactive waste. And there's no way really being addressed on how to address that and perpetuality. And those stacks have been known to fail. Back in the 60s, they did have a pond that failed, and it literally did kill Charlotte Harbor for a while. They are battling a leak right now. Whether that creates a catastrophic failure or not is certainly up for question. They probably are ahead of it at this juncture, but that doesn't mean that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, those stacks won't fail, and that we'll pay the consequence of that. And Lake Okeechobee is an interesting character too. You know, Lake Okeechobee used to be a white sand lake, used to be a sand bottom lake. And then back in the 60s and the 50s, there was so much going in there from the sugar factories that it became what's called the benthos lake, a muck bottom lake. And we're paying for that today. That more so actually than the mines themselves. The mines themselves indirectly contribute to it because of the fertilizers that are used for the agricultural lands upstream. But it's an interesting and difficult issue, and one that hasn't been addressed properly. And we certainly don't need to relax the reins now. I totally agree with you. I'm behind you on that 100%.
Absolutely.
But we do need more baseball here.
What was that?
We do need more baseball here. Yeah. I'm just saying that because I love my Chicago Cubs, and they almost thought about coming here for spring training. I think you should lobby for that. I'm already lobbying you for that. When you're in there, the first thing I want you to do is bring my Chicago Cubs here for spring training so it's more convenient to me. Get them out of Arizona.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'll help our economy out a lot.
Yeah, write that down in your notes there. Okay.
Hey, I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
I'm gonna play a little game. What's your word? So, what was your childhood dream?
My childhood dream?
Uh-huh.
I had one of my grandfathers was a farmer in Southern Illinois. And as I told you, mentioned earlier, I was just totally loved by everybody. I wanted to be a gentleman farmer. I was smart enough to know I didn't want to be a farmer, but I wanted to someday be able to have some acreage and a tractor and be able to run that equipment at my leisure. And Linda and I did enjoy that lifestyle for 10 years when we lived just outside of Richmond, Virginia. So I have actually attained that childhood dream. From a personal career standpoint, when I was in high school, I always knew I wanted to get involved in environmental sciences. So when I went to university, I took a lot of chemistry, botany, and zoology because they didn't know what environmental sciences were in those days. And I've been in the water treatment industry since 1972, cleaning up and reusing water, working with places like in Fort Myers. They have a trash to energy plant where they're taking trash and making electricity from it with a zero liquid discharge of water. They discharge no water at all. They evaporate to dryness, and the final water is actually used to scrub the stack so that there's no mercury or other things. It's a very interesting plant and way ahead of its time. It's probably about 25 years old now.
Wow. So you're a water professional.
I got water on the brain, yes.
I'll tell you this, out of all the water that is in the world, only 1% of it is fresh drinking water.
Right.
And that's why we have to do everything in our power to make sure that we're protecting that water.
And 20% of it's sitting in the Great Lakes. 20% of that 1% is sitting in the Great Lakes.
Yep.
Shared by the United States and Canada.
Yep, you're absolutely right. What makes you lose track of time?
What makes me lose track of time?
Uh-huh.
Living in Punta Gorda, retired, it was every day is Saturday. And not having to go to an office first thing in the morning, sometimes having to remember an appointment, and I confused which day it is. So that's probably it. I don't lose track of time when I'm planning to go see my grandchildren, though. I know every single minute up to the point I get to see them. To me, in my tradition, that's my future when I'm gone. It will be the roads and the paths that they'll get to travel, and my knowing that they're going to we raised good kids that are going to give them good choices and paths is an incredible joy.
Well, one of the things that I dreamed about when I was a kid was owning a barber shop. So as you see, I'm living that dream. But when I got to college, those dreams started to change when I found out that I could make an impact in this world through policy. And so I changed my major to political science and graduated and now running for Congress. Even now as a candidate, as a Democratic nominee, um, sometimes people call me and they have problems and I'm able to make phone calls on their behalf, even as a candidate, and things happen for them. And I think that's very powerful. It's humbling, and I want to be able to do more of that. So my new dream is to uh, bring about positive change for as many people as I can through policy and my oath of office. So that's my dream. And the thing that makes me lose track of time is actually working on behalf of the people and also being with family, watching Netflix um, and Hulu.
By the way, there's another dream that we both shared that we both attained.
What's that?
We married doctors.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was never my dream, but it happened.
My wife just got in. She says hello.
How are you doing today? Good to see you.
Can you see me?
There you go.
It's hot out there.
Okay. Anyway,
Oh, we need a t-shirt.
we're on live. Linda says we need a t-shirt. Okay.
We'll get you some t-shirts. And for everyone else, please visit ellisonforcongress.com and go to our shop. And we have a lot of beautiful products. It's beautiful, I tell you, it's beautiful.
And it's for a good cause.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. What does the world need more of?
Other than the typical cliches of tolerance, we need a sustainable population. And we need a realistic, sustainable population. The technology may allow us to learn to sustain the population we have now. These are tough moral issues to discuss, but when I was a child, there were 2 billion people in the world. There's now 7.2 billion, yet we've got things like global warming. That's all part of the package, because we've got so many more people. There's so many more demands on the resources of our planet and of our society. And I would say it's to have to learn how to have a truly sustainable population.
I like that.
Then we can have civility at the same time, because a lot of what we do is because what we don't have or what we perceive we don't have.
Well, I'll tell you this. If you hear it again, you know where I got it from.
Okay. You're welcome.
So who are some of your heroes?
Oh, there's so many of them and for different reasons. Well, I'll get Ernie Banks out of the way because I watched him as a kid playing baseball for the Chicago Cubs.
Okay.
Other than that, but well, Martin Luther King for sure, because he was a flawed individual who had good insight and had great things. But I'll tell you, Theodore Roosevelt, because Theodore Roosevelt, first of all, had this great speech where he said that the only person that really accounts is the man that gets into the arena and sheds his blood and sweat. And in the best of all situations, notes great victories. I'm paraphrasing this, but in the worst case, at least knows he's not among the cold, timid souls that knew neither victory nor defeat. It's incredible. And when you think of his background, he came from wealth, yet he was a trust buster. He understood the economics of then again, negative economics of consolidating too much in too few hands. And so he was one of the leaders of the trust busters, and he was just an interesting character. My favorite author is Mark Twain, by the way, as you and I have discussed. I sometimes think because of the language of his day, some people can't get through because of some of the verbiage he uses, but particularly when he does the speech of Huckleberry Finn's speech when he's on the raft going down the Mississippi with his dear friend Jim, who's escaping slavery, and he is torn. He's like a George Wallace figure in a sense, in reverse. He's torn between, he's a white man, he should be turning Jim in, but Jim is a human being and he should be helping Jim escape. And the contradictions in that, and he finally does the right thing, but that type of nuance. And then he turns around, Mark Twain, and writes Pudd'nhead Wilson, where he also takes a case where a black child is exchanged for a white child at birth. And so the white child grows up thinking he's black, and the black child grows up thinking he's white. And it turns out that if you're raised white, you act white, and if you're raised black, you act black. It was not that there was really no difference in people. He would deal with those issues in his humor and in his satire. So Mark Twain is also one of my heroes from that perspective, because it still speaks to me to this day. And my father, may he rest, who still brings a tear to my eye when I remember him.
What about Alan? What about Alan Ellison?
Well, you're my future hero. Yes, of course you are. You're the hero for my grandchildren.
Okay. I will try my best.
To you.
I will try my best to live up to that.
Who's your heroes?
I have several as well. I would say Harriet Tubman is one of my heroes. Very powerful, focused, diligent woman who, did a great deal to bring about change for African Americans in this country. I would say Martin Luther King, a genius of a man, someone who spoke truth to power. I really appreciate what he did with getting the media involved in the marches, because it was really the turning point of bringing the world into the conversation of civil rights, especially what he did with the New York Times and his letters to the editors, so that people can begin to connect with the plight of African Americans in this country. I mean, he challenged people in a way where they really had to look deep inside of themselves and to be able to see African Americans as brothers and sisters in the faith. And he had some really powerful words and quotes that stick with me. One of them, when he's talked about America, is it has its citizens living in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. That speaks to me in a way that makes me understand that there is a lot that we can do to have positive effect to the very least of us, or at least people that what society would deem as people who are living below the poverty line and below the middle class. I really don't like those terms, but for the sake of people understanding what I'm talking about, I'm using those terms. Shirley Chisholm, she's definitely one of my heroes. I mean, she was unbossed.
Good choice.
She took no mess. And these people, they all have something in common for me, and that is, in a time where it was not safe to do so, they stood up and they used themselves as sacrifices for the betterment of people, of others. They were selfless individuals. So I can appreciate that. And you're one of my heroes because you're in a well, you're in a very comfortable place, and as you said before, you can blend into the into the shadows and not have to do much. But every chance you get, you speak up. You speak truth to power, and you keep me straight because in our conversations, you're always keeping me straight, and you've never steered me wrong. Um, you support this campaign in ways that a lot of people have not, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm appreciative to you and your wife. Um, I mean, what you did prior to, even in the midst of COVID, no one else did that. And so I'm very thankful. Um, I understand how you think, and I know that you are a visionary. And I like being around people who can see past the darkness and can see the light, and you see the light. And so, I'm very appreciative of that. And not only do you see it, but you do everything in your power to make sure that that light becomes a little bit closer to our present. And so,
Well,
thank you.
in my tradition, we don't want to take those kinds of credits, but I just want to say that one of the things that I've appreciated from you since I first met you is we've been able to have conversations without being politically correct and condescending to each other. And I think that's what we need amongst us all, is to not have to worry about being condescending and saying, well, gee, I've got such and such I've got a friend of such and such, I've got a Hindu friend, or I've got and also understand our own personal bigots. I mean, our own personal prejudice. I jokingly say, I'm not prejudiced, I just hate bigots. I mean, that by itself is a contradiction, but it's actually true. I'm very uncomfortable with people that express that, because it's very self-serving. I'm not sure that I've been quite as involved as you think I have been, but I have been involved because I was raised to serve, just as you were. You were the one that stood up to back in 2018, not me. I could have, and I took a big sigh of relief when you did. So I thank you for that, and you should just keep onward and go forward and never look back. What, honey? Yeah, the future. Yeah, it's as Linda says, and I've been making that point. The future isn't me. I'm just an old white guy. The future is your generation, my son's generation, my grandchildren's generation, and you're the guys that need to step up, and you're doing it. You're doing it, and you're standing toe to toe to the guys that you need to, and I appreciate that. That's what gives me optimism.
Well, I'm definitely going to do my part. Thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you. Thank Linda for all the work that she does. But we can't do this alone. This is the largest congressional district in the state of Florida. It covers 9 counties. So I have to lean and depend on the help of volunteers. So if any one of you believe that we deserve better from our elected officials, then I want to ask that you join our movement, join what we're doing, get involved, roll up your sleeves, and please go to ellisonforcongress.com. There's a section on the website for volunteers. It lists all of the different ways that you can get involved, but we really need your help. And if you don't want to get involved as a volunteer, but you have a little extra money, then please send a contribution. There is no amount that is too small. We like the kind that jingles, but we rather have the kind that folds. So please make a contribution and get involved with this campaign. And just so you know, in order to reach our audiences with our message, that costs money. We have to be able to send out mailers. We need to be able to buy stamps. We have to pay for Facebook boosting. We have to be able to get yard signs, radio time, cable television time. It all costs money. If it didn't cost, I wouldn't ask. So please make a contribution today at ellisonforcongress.com. And if you want to purchase a book of stamps, then please purchase a book of stamps and send them to 114 South Ridgewood Drive, Sebring, Florida. We'd be happy to have those because we have a bunch of thank you letters to get out, and it gets kind of costly. So thank you all so much for taking the time to join this Get in Social with Allen Town Hall special guest, Gary Wein. Thank you all for staying here this long on this broadcast, and please share this broadcast with as many people as you can, because you all have a voice, and it's through social media, and you can maximize that voice and help us to maximize our message. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Thank you, Gary.
You
Linda,
betcha.
you have-
Take care. Take care, guys.